Sometimes, silence isn't serenity, it's pressure in disguise. You're lying on your bed, eyes wide open, the room dim and quiet. But your mind isn't. It's sprinting through unfinished lists, looping old conversations, rehearsing the next day's version of you. Thoughts tick like a relentless metronome. I should have done more today. I didn't finish that task. I'm falling behind, again. Even your rest becomes another item on the performance checklist. You try to sleep, but even that feels like a skill you're failing at. The world tells you to hustle harder, achieve more, be more. Rest is a luxury. Pausing is dangerous. Stillness somehow is synonymous with failure. You're not just asked to keep up, you're expected to speed up. And if you don't, you wonder if you're already obsolete. But have you ever stopped to ask, what if the compulsion to keep going is the very thing unraveling you from the inside? This isn't laziness. This is burnout dressed in silence. It's the kind of tired that doesn't show up with yawns or slumped shoulders. No, this exhaustion is camouflaged. It wears lipstick, answers emails, cracks jokes, and says, "I'm good, thanks," in the group chat. It delivers results. It functions well enough to fool even you. You show up, you work hard, you try harder, you're fine. But inside, you're aching for permission to stop. Not forever, just long enough to catch your breath, to stop pretending you're okay, to stop apologizing for not being more. Yet even that feels like asking for too much, because somewhere, deep in your conditioning, rest became guilt, and guilt became your constant background music. Somewhere along the way, life turned into a scoreboard. As children, we colored outside the lines and danced in the rain. We built castles from nothing but imagination. We didn't ask if we were good enough. We just were. But now, as adults, every move is tracked, graded, posted, compared. Did you read enough books this month? Are you meditating daily, meal prepping, journaling, running 5 miles before dawn? Are you turning your hobbies into passive income yet? You open social media and see people transforming. New bodies, new businesses, new spiritual awakenings, and you start to shrink. Not because you aren't doing anything, but because what you're doing never seems to match their highlight reel. Even peace becomes a competition. Who's healing more? Who's more mindful? Who's building the better version of themselves, faster? But let's be honest, you're not just tired from doing too much. You're tired from trying to be too much. The overachiever in you. It's not just ambition, it's a survival instinct. You learned, maybe without knowing it, that being loved meant being useful, that safety came from being needed, that your value was transactional. So you kept performing, kept pleasing, kept pushing. You said yes when you were depleted. You smiled through disappointment. You cleaned up other people's messes while ignoring your own bleeding edges. Every compliment, "You're so strong, you're such a rock, I don't know how you do it all," felt like a secret cage, and you locked yourself inside with pride. Somewhere in that performance, your real self got buried. You became what everyone else needed. The reliable one, the capable one, the one who doesn't need help. But who were you before all the proving began? When you stand in front of the mirror now, there's a shadow of someone staring back, someone tired of being impressive. Who am I without the striving, you ask? And the silence that follows isn't empty. It's sacred. It's your real voice, waiting to be heard again. There is a grief we rarely speak of, the grief of becoming everything except yourself. It doesn't always show up as tears. Sometimes it looks like restlessness. Sometimes it looks like snapping at a loved one. Sometimes it looks like endless scrolling at 2 a.m., unable to sit with your own stillness. This grief accumulates. It collects in your joints, in your breath, in your broken sleep. Your body becomes the keeper of everything you've refused to feel. And one day, it starts speaking louder than your mind, maybe through panic, or a shutdown, or a sense of hollowness so deep it echoes. So what if we stopped, just for a moment, not to collapse, but to listen? What if we paused, not out of defeat, but out of deep reverence for ourselves? To ask gently, what have I been running from? What part of me is exhausted from being silenced? Who am I really when I'm not performing? Stopping doesn't mean you've failed. It means you've remembered that you're human. It's the radical act of saying, I deserve to exist, even when I'm not producing, fixing, or performing. That's not giving up. That's the beginning of finally coming home to yourself. Not everything that weighs you down is meant to be carried, but how do you let go when the weight feels like a part of your identity? You wake up, and the first thing you feel isn't excitement, it's pressure. A low hum of urgency wraps around you before your feet even touch the floor. Messages wait, tasks loom, people expect. Your existence feels less like living and more like managing. You pour coffee, not to enjoy it, but to keep yourself upright. You scroll through your phone, not for pleasure, but to check where you're already behind. The day hasn't even started, and you already feel late to your own life. Where did we learn this rhythm? Who told us that if we're not exhausted, we're not doing enough? Somewhere along the path, speed became our drug of choice. The faster we move, the less we feel. Movement became the escape route. After all, stillness means reckoning with grief, with guilt, with questions we've ignored for years. So we stay in motion. We jump from meeting to meeting. We fill every quiet moment with podcasts, texts, audio messages. We multitask until our attention fragments into 1,000 pieces, none of which actually see us. It feels productive. It looks impressive. But underneath, it's a strategy, a shield, a way to avoid sitting in the stillness where the truth starts to whisper. Because if we did stop, what would we hear? Maybe the voice that says, "I'm lonely," or the one that asks, "Is this what I really want?" Or worse, the one that has gone silent because we've ignored it for so long. We fear what lives in the quiet. We fear what might surface when the noise dies down. Because maybe we've built our lives around roles, routines, and relationships that were never truly ours. To confront that possibility? Terrifying. It's easier to keep going, to tell ourselves we'll rest later.
If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support.
Heal later. Ask the hard questions later, but later becomes a graveyard for truths we were too afraid to face. And so, we become experts at endurance, but amateurs at self-awareness. We know how to power through, how to show up even when we're empty, how to smile when we're struggling. But ask us what we actually need, what we deeply desire, what makes us feel truly alive. Often, we don't know, because no one ever taught us to ask. They only taught us to perform. When did survival become our default setting? We learn to anticipate others' needs, to adapt to every room, to wear the right emotional costume. We've spent so long being who we're supposed to be, we've forgotten how to be who we are. But beneath the performance lives a person who's begging to be seen. Not the achiever, not the fixer, not the one who always has it together, but the one who's tired, the one who's tender, the one who misses who they were before the world told them they weren't enough. And that version of you, they're not gone. They're just buried beneath expectations, obligations, and years of pretending. They don't want perfection. They want permission to breathe, to feel, to exist without justification. We talk so much about growth, but real growth often starts with unraveling, not building, not striving, not leveling up, but unlearning. Unlearning the reflex to say yes when we mean no. Unlearning the shame attached to resting. Unlearning the belief that our worth is tied to our output. That process? It's not glamorous. It doesn't look good on Instagram. It's messy, quiet, inward. It's sitting in your car longer than you need to, just to cry in private. It's journaling not for productivity, but for survival. It's realizing that the person you need to become isn't someone new. It's someone you buried. So, how do we begin? With something so small, it almost feels silly. With one deep breath, with one act of refusal, with one sacred moment of choosing ourselves. Not because we've earned it, not because we've achieved balance, but because we're finally done negotiating our humanity. Maybe today, that means not answering the call. Maybe it means cancelling a plan you never wanted. Maybe it means staring out the window and doing absolutely nothing, on purpose. These aren't wasted moments. They are reclamations. They are the gentle revolutions we start within. The truth is, you don't need to burn down your life to come back to yourself. You just need to stop abandoning the voice that's been whispering. There has to be more than this. And there is. But to find it, you don't need to chase it. You just need to slow down long enough to notice it's been with you all along. Quiet, steady, waiting. It's not the chaos outside that exhausts us the most. It's the war we wage within. You've mastered the art of appearing fine. You speak clearly. You show up on time. You meet deadlines. You make people laugh. But when the world quiets down, when there are no screens left to scroll, no errands left to run, that's when the ache returns. That familiar pressure behind your eyes. That strange emptiness in your chest that words can't name. And so, you distract. You dive into tasks. You clean things that are already clean. You reorganize your calendar for the third time this week. Because movement feels safer than stillness. Stillness brings awareness. And awareness asks questions you don't feel ready to answer. Because facing yourself requires more courage than facing any crowd. Who are you when no one is watching? When there's no one to impress? When the applause stops? The truth is, most of us don't know, because we've spent our lives being mirrors for other people's expectations. We became what our parents needed, what our partner preferred, what our job required. But in that process, we stopped asking, what do I need? What do I believe? What does freedom feel like for me? Those questions sound simple, but they shatter illusions. They disrupt routines. They demand change. And change, even necessary change, can feel like grief. That's the part most people never talk about. We romanticize transformation. We glorify healing. We post about the glow up, the new me, the fresh chapter. But here's what healing actually looks like. Crying over memories you thought you buried. Admitting that a version of you was never truly happy, even when everyone else envied your life. Letting go of dreams that were never really yours, but someone else's projection. It's uncomfortable. It's raw. It's real. And for a while, it may feel like you're falling apart. But in truth, you're falling inward, back toward the parts of you that were silenced just to keep the peace. Sometimes, we fear the truth, not because it's cruel, but because it's clear. Clear about the job that drains your spirit. Clear about the relationship that stopped being nourishing. Clear about the habits that mimic comfort but create distance from your true self. That kind of clarity doesn't knock gently. It arrives like a thunderclap. It wakes you up at 3 a.m. It interrupts conversations with a sudden wave of sadness. It makes you pause in the middle of an ordinary day and whisper to yourself, I can't keep doing this. And that's not weakness. That's awareness rising. That's the self you've been avoiding, finally catching up. But awareness is only the beginning. The real shift happens in what you do next, because you have a choice. You can pretend you didn't hear it. You can scroll past it, busy yourself with another to-do list. You can stay inside the familiar pain, because at least it's predictable. Or you can turn toward it, the ache, the pull, the longing. You can let the discomfort become your compass, guiding you not away from yourself, but back home. That's the moment your healing begins. Not with a new plan, not with a perfect affirmation, but with one brave decision to stop lying to yourself. And yes, it's terrifying, but it's also liberating. You start saying no. You start resting without explanation. You start asking different questions. Not what do they expect from me, but what do I expect from myself? And suddenly, the space you used to fill with noise begins to breathe. The mask starts to slip, not because you failed, but because you're tired of pretending. You realize that being authentic isn't about being loud. Sometimes, it's simply about not hiding anymore. You don't need a breakdown to begin your breakthrough. Sometimes, all it takes is a moment of honesty, the courage to name what's been hurting, the softness to admit what you need, the gentleness to forgive yourself for not knowing sooner. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming, through awareness, through stillness, through truth. And truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs you to stop running long enough to hear it. What if your healing doesn't look like fireworks, but like a single flame refusing to go out? Not loud, not dramatic, but consistent, quiet, enduring. We spend so much time waiting for transformation to arrive like a tidal wave, to knock down our old selves and rebuild something better overnight. But real change rarely feels that cinematic. It feels like brushing your teeth when you want to stay in bed, like stepping outside when the world feels too loud, like saying no when your voice still trembles. The beginning of everything often looks like nothing, but it's not nothing. It's a choice, a whisper of a new way. So what does it mean to truly slow down? It doesn't mean abandoning your responsibilities. It doesn't mean quitting your job or fleeing to a mountain cabin. It means choosing presence over performance, again and again. It means making tea and actually tasting it. It means walking without headphones. It means reading a paragraph twice, just because it made you feel something. It's leaving space between things, between waking and working, between stimulus and reaction, between what the world demands and what your soul actually needs. And in that space, something shifts. Your breath deepens, your body unclenches, your inner landscape, once filled with storms and static, begins to clear. And in that clarity, you begin to see what was there all along. You begin to notice the way the sunlight hits your floor at 3 p.m., the texture of a loved one's laugh, the subtle difference between hunger and habit, the quiet instinct that says, this path feels right. And most importantly, you start to recognize yourself, not as the person you were told to be, not as the sum of your achievements, but as the living, breathing being underneath it all, worthy, whole, human. You start realizing that slowness isn't laziness. It's listening, it's choosing, it's reclaiming the rhythm of your own body, your own breath, your own life. Of course, the world won't always applaud your slowness. It might call you selfish for not answering right away, lazy for taking breaks, irresponsible for leaving room to breathe. But that's because we live in a culture that confuses urgency with importance, that mistakes exhaustion for commitment. That teaches us how to optimize, but not how to feel. And when you step outside of that machine, it will rattle. It will tempt you back with its familiar pace, its dopamine loops, its praise for being on top of things. But remember, peace rarely shouts. It waits. It waits for you to choose it. Again, and again, and again. And every time you choose it, you create a new kind of safety. Not the kind built on control or performance, but the kind built on honesty, on rest, on enoughness, a home within yourself. Where your worth isn't earned, it's remembered. Where your value isn't proven, it's known. Where your presence is no longer negotiated, it simply is. That's the revolution. Not doing more, but believing you were never required to prove yourself in the first place. So, what now? Now, you begin. Not with a grand plan, not with a perfect mindset, but with whatever is within reach. Maybe it's closing your eyes for one full breath. Maybe it's cancelling a call and taking a walk instead. Maybe it's deleting the app you open out of habit, not joy. Maybe it's simply asking yourself, what do I need right now? And honoring the answer. There is no finish line, no final version of you. There is only this moment, this choice, this heartbeat. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it. The gentle voice that says, you don't have to keep running. You are allowed to rest all along. Because the opposite of burnout isn't balance. It's belonging. Belonging to yourself, returning to yourself, choosing yourself, even when the world moves too fast to see you. And in that choice, you are not falling behind. You are waking up. You are returning. You are finally home.